Hey, it's Gene. I'm
Roger.
Roger. We're talking The Descent today. It came out when, Gene? 2000. So
2005.
it's old like us. Um, Neil Marshall is the director. He's kind of well known in the horror film community. This really was the movie that really started him down the career path. He had done Dog Soldiers before, which is pretty good. Little werewolf movie. Have you seen that one?
No,
No. Okay.
no. Generally, I've been pretty high on werewolf movies.
I'm not a big fan either. This one is kind of
Like they're
cool.
just not done very well, as opposed to this movie. We'll get into it a lot later, but good movies have great scenes. Good movies have good scenes, and this movie is just loaded with really good scenes. As an audience, as a viewer, it pulls you into the movie, and those really good scenes work together to make this a pretty good movie.
Right, and the basic premise here is you've got six adventurous women that
Yep.
meet probably a couple times a year to go do extreme sports related things, and this time they're going into some cave, and
Spelunking.
they discover terrible things down in that cave.
Yes, things you don't want to run into. Yes, or in this cave. Yes.
And really the story, there's a woman by the name of Sarah, and she's kind of the primary person we're following.
Oh, she
in
definitely
this
is
movie.
the primary person because we see visions of her. She has little visions in her mind, and we, as the audience, we're allowed to see that as well.
Right, in the movie.
But we don't do that with any of the other characters.
Right, the movie sets it up where she experiences this traumatic event of her husband and child being killed in a car accident.
Yeah, in
so-
pretty gruesome ways.
Yes,
Reminded me of like a Final
Destination.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure, for
Yeah.
sure. And so there's this also running piece going over of her kind of dealing with the effects of PTSD, trauma. She's trying to medicate herself.
Yeah, when I first saw this movie, I was wondering if that whole prelude, Sarah trauma was really necessary. But we do come back to that later, so we revisit that later. So there is an element of why they put this little introductory trauma into Sarah's life, and we're allowed to see it as the viewer.
Well, and it's interesting because we will talk about the two different endings to this movie, and
Yes,
one of the endings
different endings.
does not have the
One
payoff.
is the U.S. version, which is a little sanitized because I guess Americans, we just can't take the truth.
Right.
We can't handle it, people. And there's the UK version, which is much darker. And if you think about their plight, where they are, it's probably more realistic.
Yes, and for her character too, when she's dealing with that trauma, I think it just works. The American version, it just kind of, you got out, and everything's basically okay.
Well, it's kind of like, reminds me of like Sally. This movie makes homage to a lot of different movies, and I thought her getting out, and in the American version was her kind of like being like Sally in Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And even at the end, a big truck drives by, right? And the same thing happens in Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And so, the girl gets out. In both these cases, the girl gets out.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but I appreciate the Texas Chainsaw Massacre callback. Good job, Sheen.
Yeah, I know that you love that movie more than life itself. But for some reason I can't explain it, but okay.
But they go down into this cave, and one of the beauties of Neil Marshall as a director, very atmospheric. I love this use of the sets are really great, claustrophobic, and I also like his choice of how to actually light this. Because, of course, you're going into a cave. There's no light source down there except anything you might bring.
Again, going back to great scenes, he really uses the interplay of light and darkness. Because they have different light sources, of course. They all have headlamps, flashlights, which are bright. But, even a big dark place is not going to fully illuminate. But they have flares.
Which are red.
Which are red. And then they bring up that sometimes you're in a cave and the caves appear lit. But it's because there's phosphorus like in the rocks, and so it provides like a light source. And so there's sometimes you see that, and they're pretty sophisticated in their journey. One of them brings a camera, and this camera has a night vision setting, and so sometimes they use that, So the interplay of light and dark, and later in the movie there's they find relics because I guess people have been trapped here before,
right?
And so when they find this like cylinder that had some flammable liquid in it, and they make a torch, and so there's another light source is a torch, which turns into a weapon later.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
But I think that's the cool part of Neil Marshall's vision here is, man, if I just have it lit the same way all the time, it might get boring. And so he frames it up with different colors and things like that, and it's really cool. And the phosphorus piece that Gene's talking about, that actually leads to the first big problem for this team of girls, where one of the girls kind of falls because she sees this phosphorus and
she gets excited. So let's get out, but she falls off the drop off, and she so there are 6 women. And I guess going back a little bit, all the exterior scenes, this is a British movie. All the exterior scenes were filmed in Scotland, but all the interior scenes are sets.
Right.
There's nothing actually in a cave. I mean, you can't do that. It's way too dangerous.
Let's try to kill all our actors.
And I've heard from people that explore caves. Caving is a lot like mountain climbing. You've got to use similar equipment. You got to be in the similar level of shape. And you got to have a certain technical knowledge to be successful climbing mountains, of course. But you got to have that same kind of technical knowledge to climb or to go spelunking. And these women in this movie gets into that technical knowledge, which for me kind of like makes the movie more logical and it's more thoughtful. And it's why some movies, sorry, Roger, I'm just going to say it, why Event Horizon just doesn't work for me, because you got to have like astronauts acting like astronauts. And then in that movie, you don't. And it just blows it for me, because I'm just like, no, this is not how astronauts behave. You're well trained, you're thought out, you're well educated. But yeah. Anyway, we're not going to get into that. Yeah, but here you're expecting them to have technical knowledge and to be in shape, and they are, and it works.
Right, and they also do make a line of dialogue where they do identify that some of them are more experienced than others, but they've all
which would be natural, but they have some level.
Right.
Yeah. So they're watch out, Roger and I, we talk about the movie in detail, so we're spoilers all over the place.
Spoilers for a 2005 movie. I think it's okay.
Yeah, so if you want, maybe you could turn off here. I fully recommend this movie. I would even put this as one of the better horror movies. I'm not going to say of all time, but surely it's a great, entertaining horror movie. It passes the rewatch test for sure.
Agreed. Yeah. It does a really good job of ramping up the tension, because there's the whole sequence where they have to fit themselves through this hole to get to another part of the cave system. That collapse, which traps them as far as they can't just go back that way. And so this director and this story is continuing to ramp up the tension piece
the tension
by piece.
Higher and higher and higher.
Right. For those of you who have seen this movie before, the little creature guys, or the big creature guys, don't show. There's not even a mention of them or a notice of them until about the 48-minute mark. So they have already been trapped in there, and they're trying to figure out how to get out of there. And then, oh, by the way, here's this other thing that they're going to have to be dealing with. And then, oh, by the way, one of the girls breaks her leg when she does that fall, and so that's another level.
I put it in order, so I had to actually do some research here, because it can kind of there's 6 of them, you lose track of who's who. But there's Holly. She there's phosphorescence in the rock. She thinks it's light source, and so she runs to it, falls down a little drop off. Compound breaks her leg. Horror element. They reset the leg, and you're just seeing everything right there. And so they put a splint on it. Yeah, and then this is when the creatures show up, because they smell the blood or something, and they attempt to take Holly away, and there's this huge fight, because they're all athletic women and they have axes,
right?
And
yes,
so
they do.
and they use them, and so there's this huge fight over Holly. The creatures won, and they try to grab Holly and take her away. Of course, the women, they fight, but it's super scary. And they become scattered. They were all together. They were staying together, but they have a big fight and they're scattered. So Holly is taken by the creatures and she's killed. Of course, then Juno is probably the strongest of all of them.
Yeah.
And then she is fighting these creatures and being successful in killing them. And then one of her friends approaches behind her, and then Juno, again, spoiler, Juno thinks it's a creature, and so she swings around and sticks her axe in that creature's neck, but it's not the creature, it's actually Beth, her friend Beth. And so it's fatally injures her, although she doesn't die right away. And so, but in Beth, in falling down, grabs a necklace off of Juno, and it turns out that necklace has this little saying on it, and the saying was like the favorite saying of Sarah's husband.
Yeah.
So the idea is, how in the world would Juno have a necklace from Sarah's husband?
Right.
Yeah. But then Juno leaves Sarah. Juno leaves Beth there. Yeah, and then the girls are separated, and there's a small group. Sam, Rebecca, and Juno are together. And they get to another precipice, and then Sam starts crawling across it again. But then the creatures are all alerted to their presence, and I guess they can crawl on ceilings.
Well, they're very athletic in how they can get around.
It's interesting. Good movies, and also a thing about good movies is that you can think about them logically afterwards, after you've seen it. And then, because as they go into the caves, you see this very intricate, nicely drawn cave drawing, which is something that clearly could not be done by these creatures.
Right.
So you wonder, how long have these creatures been in here? Like maybe they were just regular people, and they're definitely humanoid. So you kind of think maybe humans went down in there a long time ago for sanctuary, shelter, caves, safety, whatever, from enemies. And then maybe they got trapped, or they decided to stay. And so they drew these cave drawings, but then over time they de-evolved into these creatures. They lost their ability to see. They have no hair. They're all white. They lost their language, but they could use echolocation, right, to find their prey. And their intelligence kind of decreased a little bit. So you wonder about things like that, And so, yeah, Sam, Rebecca, and Juno are off, and then Sam's crawling a precipice. Creature crawls on the ceiling, and they have a little battle upside down, and and Sam kills the creature, but Sam in the battle is in the struggle is fatally injured herself. Right. Yeah.
Right. So one of the things, going back to that initial attack encounter where the creatures are fighting to get Holly's body, my mind went straight to any of these African safari movies you see, or documentaries you see, where a pack of hyenas is trying to steal some sort of food from like a lion, and it's just kind of this back and forth crazy thing. Yeah. That's kind of what this is like. So really highlighting the animalistic nature of these creatures.
Yeah.
But the one thing I will point out too, which may be off-putting for some viewers, this is frenetic editing and camera work going on when these attacks happen.
A lot of motion.
It often is kind of difficult to ascertain exactly what is happening. So just be aware, it's one of those movies that kind of really speeds up the action sequences frenetically to where, okay, what's happening?
Right. A little comment on that. Yeah, those some scenes have used the word frenetic, kinetic. There's a lot of energy. It's hard to follow, but then it speeds up, and then the director slows it down. Because right after a major battle, after the battle, we'll call it the battle for Holly.
The battle
Yeah, then it's Sam, Rebecca, and Juno. Then they have a battle, and they slow down a lot, and they talk about what in the world are these creatures, and they stand over a creature that they have just killed. And they try to analyze it so they could think of a way to have an advantage. So I just thought of that. That's brilliant on the director's part, is having these super frenetic scenes, and then you just slow it down, and then maybe you let your audience a chance to catch up.
Right.
And to revisit the characters, and to become reacquainted to the characters, and to re-like the characters. And yeah. So I really like the pacing. This movie's got great pacing.
Yeah, and I liked the scene you're talking about just because it's established early on that I don't remember her name, of course, but she's in medical school. And so then
it could have been Sam.
Yeah, and that's who it is. And then they're like, hey, take a look at this dead thing here. What can you ascertain from that? And so she's using her medical knowledge to try to figure things out about this creature, you know. Oh, and she's doing, well, they're obviously blind, and you know, and she's the one that figures out that it's all about echolocation. They can't actually see us because there's a couple scenes where they're kind of laying on the ground, and one of the creatures will just kind of move right by them. And
they're on like a ledge, and they're just being still and quiet. And the creature comes by on the same ledge and just walks right by them, and of course doesn't notice them.
Right. Yeah. And so they're kind of figuring out, okay, here's how we need to work this. But again, with all of the other issues of we're trapped in a cave that we're not familiar with, it's dark, there's these creatures, we don't know how to get out of here. So it's really got this good intensity level, tension level going on pretty much all throughout. Well, once from when they get down into the cave is when it really starts to go. Yeah,
so Sam, let's get back to the order. So Sam is killed on the ceiling. And then Rebecca and Juno are on the ledge just kind of watching. But then the creatures, they're all alerted to their presence, and the creatures come up behind them and they grab Rebecca. Yeah, and again, we're spoilers, but this is a horror movie. They pretty much just eat her alive.
Yeah. They're doing a full-on Night of the Living Dead situation.
Yeah. So Rebecca, and so it's just Juno and Sarah, and they later on, and then Sarah on her own runs into creatures, and Sarah herself has this battle, and she ends up again. This movie makes references to other movies, and there's this great Apocalypse Now kind of scene where she falls into this pit. And it's covered with liquid, but it just looks like just a pit of blood. Mm-hmm. And then she just comes out of it, and she comes out of it slowly, kind of like Martin Sheen,
right?
You know, out of the water. Yeah. So it's good that they pay homage to other movies like that.
Well, and it's also the Texas Chainsaw Massacre homage there too, where Sally is covered in blood in TCM, and this girl then, from that moment when she comes out, she's got that same Sally Hardesty look of just blood all over her.
Right.
You know.
Yeah.
But during that sequence, you're also recognizing that Sarah's no pushover at all. So
Sarah's not. No, in a way, she kind of changes a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. She becomes, I'm getting out of here, and I am gonna just kill these things.
Yeah.
And the great thing about that whole sequence and that set piece there is there are tens of thousands of bones of other things down in this area.
You see a lot of like skulls. You see human skulls,
and all sorts of other animal bones and parts. And
the creatures definitely go outside at night, kill their victims and animals too, and of course lots of animals, and they drag them back and they eat them. Yeah.
And so it's a really cool set there to just show how long this has been happening, because there's even a sequence right there where a much smaller one of these creatures, an infant kind of creature, attacks her, and then the mother comes looking for the creature.
right. Yep. And then, and so there are just two of them left now. There's Sarah and Juno, and they meet up, and then the survivors. And so there's a standoff. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and again, we're spoilers, but Sarah has an axe, and so Sarah hits Juno in the leg with the axe, and she, I think it's the betrayal. She finds out that Juno had the necklace. How would Juno get the necklace? Mm-hmm. And so it's clearly there is an affair going on between Juno and Sarah's husband, who has now been dead a year. Something that she had no idea about, but until this very moment. So all the feelings of betrayal and hurt just come up, and I don't know if she would have hit Juno in the leg if she didn't feel that betrayal, because she wants to get out, but they were all pretty close. These girls were pretty close. Mm-hmm. And so, but no, she hits her in the leg. I mean, just impales her axe into Juno's leg. There's no way Juno's getting out after that. And so then Sarah runs off, reaches the opening of the cave, gets out of the cave, escapes to her car, and in Terminator 2 glory, the car is open, pulls down the visor, the keys are there, starts it off, drives off. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then after clearly escaping, she gets onto the main highway, a 2-lane road going. Brrr. The truck passes, the homage to Texas Chainsaw Massacre. She puts her head out of the car window, driver's side window, of course, and she throws up, of course.
Second movie in a row we've had somebody throw up out a car door. We had In the Tall Grass when she was throwing up with her morning sickness.
Of course. Yeah, the morning sickness. But yeah, she turns back, and then Juno's in the car. And then in the American version,
right, and so
it ends. The movie ends right there.
Your little jump scare at the end.
Your little jump scare at the end, but you're pretty assured that there was a survivor, that Sarah had made it out. Yeah.
And
American ending.
Amazingly enough, The Descent 2, which is not a good movie, actually kind of follows off of that ending that you just described, where Sarah's still alive and all this weird stuff, and Juno is still alive in the sequel, by the way. But
really,
the other thing I do want to point out,
I don't like that already, because
nobody likes the sequel.
When Juno was left, she could barely move, but Juno could barely move, and the creatures were coming. There's no way she makes it.
Right.
It's like what I was talking about before, is that you set up a universe, everything is logical within the universe you set up, and so Juno surviving does not make sense.
Well, and the other thing about the Juno-Sarah interaction there is Sarah earlier had asked her about the girl that Juno had accidentally killed, Beth. And Juno lied, and so
Juno said that she was already dead.
And
in one of, again, good movies, good scenes, great scene. Sarah finds Beth dying, and they have a great scene, them together. Yeah, and so
she tells
and clearly
her,
Juno had left Beth alone to die by herself.
Well, and the Juno character, the other thing that really highlights how nefarious this Juno character is after the traumatic accident, Sarah is crying with one of the other girls on the floor of the hospital. Juno, you can see behind, and she does not have an interaction there. And then there's dialogue later where, hey, sorry, I haven't communicated with you since that accident.
Yeah.
Right. And so she's really trying to distance herself and pretend things didn't happen, just like she does with the Beth character, where, no, I didn't kill her. I just saw her die, and blah, blah, blah.
No. So, you put an axe in her neck, and then you left her.
But in the legitimate ending of this film,
the UK ending,
it's different. And Gene, did you get an opportunity to see that ending?
No, I haven't seen it. But I read a little description about it.
Okay, so it goes right up to what Gene just described, where, here's your last little jump scare with, there's Juno in the car, and then it ends. Right. Well, the real ending is, then it cuts back to Sarah much deeper into the cave system. She's got her little torch still, but it's starting to kind of go away, and she's hallucinating this vision of her child blowing out the birthday cake, which we had seen of hallucination of that earlier, and she's kind of smiling and is perfectly content to be down there in the cave with what she believes is her daughter. And you hear the howling of the creatures as they're coming forward, and the camera's pulling out just to show you how deep into the cave system she is. And then it ends. So much darker,
much more logical, because they say, the explorers in the movie, they say that earlier that they're 2 miles into the mountain.
Mm-hmm.
That's a long way, right? And they have no idea how to get out. They're just like Lord of the Rings. One of the girls, Juno, actually, she has a lighter, and she lights it. And then wherever there's like fresh air will alter the flame, make the flame dance. Right. And so that's the way to go. Just like Gandalf in the Lord of the Rings. So because there's air movement.
Yeah. So The Descent, like we've said, good atmosphere, good characters. You like all the characters, even Juno, until you discover how evil she is, and just the tension
you really like
and everything. I mean, it's just a quality movie. If you haven't seen it before, why? You should check it out.
There's so many movies out there, it's easy to miss them. Yeah, it's available on Prime.
Yeah, I have the unrated DVD, which allowed me to see the original ending and stuff like that.
The original ending, nice.
Yeah, and it says unrated, so I don't know if there's additional graphic violence stuff in there.
Are there additional scenes, maybe?
Well, I don't know, because I saw the American cut in the theater, of course, and then as as I am. Oh, an unrated DVD. Cool, I'm going to get that. And then,
Nice.
oh, wow, here's the original.
Oh, you should have brought it with you. We could show show you guys the box.
Yeah, for sure. But highly recommend The Descent.
Yeah, Descent is good. It's good horror. It's good stuff. Again, like I say, I've said this before. If you're a horror movie fan, Descent, you've got to see it.
Yeah, for sure. Gene, Heretic is playing at the theaters
Yes. So it's a Hugh Grant horror movie. Can you believe that? So it's an A24, so it's in the theaters now. So we'll review it next week.
Well, Hugh Grant has been in a lot of horror movies.
What?
They're just classified as romantic comedies. Have you seen any of those? They're terrifying.
Well, he was a bad guy in Paddington 2. I don't know, is that horror? I mean, he was bad. Someone wants to kill the bear. It's like, what's wrong with you?
Anyway, we will catch you next week with Heretic. So thanks for tuning in. Bye-bye.
Bye.